Imagine this, a king gifted by God with wisdom beyond measure. A man so powerful that rulers from distant lands traveled for months just to hear him speak. This is Solomon, son of David, the golden king of Israel. But hidden beneath the crown, the palace walls, and the endless riches, lies a story that most people have never heard, a story not found in your ordinary Sunday school Bible, a story whispered in ancient manuscripts, buried in forgotten texts, and preserved only in the shadows of history. The story of the day the Archangel Michael himself, God's warrior, stood face to face with the 72 demons that Solomon once commanded. Let that sink in for a moment. The wisest man who ever lived, entangled in powers so dark that the heavens had to intervene. Michael, the angel who fought Satan in heaven, now drawn into a battle with the very spirits Solomon once bent to his will. Doesn't that make you wonder? How much of Solomon's story do we really know? Could it be that the Bible gave us only a glimpse, while deeper mysteries were deliberately left out? And if Solomon truly commanded demons, why would God allow such a thing? What does it mean for us today? Stick with me, because by the time we're done, you'll never see Solomon or Michael the same way again. But before we dive in, this is Bible Mysteries, where we uncover the hidden and forgotten stories of Scripture and ancient texts. If you love exploring the mysteries of God, the angels, the fallen, and everything in between, then hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss when we release a new mystery. When we hear the name Solomon, what's the first image that comes to mind? For most people, it's the picture of a wise king sitting on his throne, his face calm, his words dripping with insight. A man who once listened to the case of two women fighting over a child and resolved it with a single sentence that stunned the world. A man whose wisdom became legendary, whose reputation spread far beyond the borders of Israel. But here's the thing about Solomon. His story is layered. On the surface, we see the golden king, the one who built the temple of the Lord. But if we dig deeper, if we peel back the glittering gold and the royal robes, we find something else. We find a man who had access to the highest wisdom from God, and yet also the darkest temptations from beneath. Let's slow down and really think about who Solomon was. He wasn't just a random ruler. He was the son of David, the greatest king Israel had ever known. From birth, there was an expectation on Solomon's life, a weight he carried. Can you imagine being the child of David, the man after God's own heart, the warrior who slew giants and built a kingdom with his bare hands? Imagine the pressure of having to live up to that legacy. Now, when Solomon began his reign, he started in humility. The Bible says he asked God for wisdom, not riches, not power, not the death of his enemies. And God was so moved by that request that he gave Solomon wisdom in abundance, more than anyone before or after him. Along with wisdom came riches, peace, and a kingdom that sparkled like no other. Kings and queens traveled to see him. The Queen of Sheba herself came, bringing gifts and marveling at his brilliance. So yes, Solomon was great, but here's the truth most people miss. The higher you rise, the more dangerous the temptations become. The greater your light, the more the shadows try to cling to you. And this is where the story takes a strange turn. Because according to ancient traditions outside the Bible, writings like the Testament of Solomon, Solomon's wisdom wasn't just about judging people or understanding riddles. It went deeper. It was said that Solomon was given a mysterious ring, a ring engraved with the seal of God. With this ring, he could command not just people, but spirits. Now pause for a second. Think about that. A king with the authority to order demons around. How would you even process that? Would you see it as a gift, a burden, a temptation? The story goes that Solomon used this ring to summon, question, and even control 72 demons. Each demon had a name. Each had a power. Some could stir up anger in men's hearts. Some could twist the mind and cause madness. Some whispered lies in the dark, stirring lust, jealousy, and hatred. Others brought physical affliction, blindness, disease, or sudden misfortune. In other words, each of the 72 represented a piece of human weakness, a reflection of the sins and struggles we face every single day. Doesn't that make you wonder, Were these demons symbolic of the very flaws Solomon would eventually fall into himself? According to the legend, Solomon bound these demons and forced them to labor in building the temple of God. Picture that for a moment. The most sacred place on earth, the house of Yahweh, being built not only by human hands but also by reluctant, snarling demons under the command of a king's ring. It sounds almost blasphemous, doesn't it? Angels and demons at work on the same project. But in a strange way, it reflects a truth we still see today. Even evil, unwillingly, can be used to serve God's greater plan. But here's the haunting detail. These demons never truly submitted. They weren't loyal. They didn't suddenly become holy. They were chained, forced, and bound only by the seal of the ring. Deep down, they hated Solomon. They despised him for using God's name against them. And they waited. They waited for the moment his grip would slip, for the day the ring would be gone, for the hour when Solomon's heart would turn just enough for them to break free. And you know what? That moment came, because Solomon, for all his wisdom, had a weakness. The Bible itself tells us he loved many foreign women, and with them came their idols, their altars, their strange practices. Slowly, quietly, Solomon allowed things into his life that pulled him away from God. A shrine here, an altar there. A small compromise that grew into a heavy chain. The very man who once prayed for wisdom was now bowing to idols. The very man who built the temple was now permitting false gods to dwell in the land. And as his heart strayed, so did his authority. According to the legend, the power of the seal began to weaken. The demons he had controlled, the very ones who helped build the temple, started to stir. Can't you almost picture it? Dark forces shifting in the shadows, whispering to one another. The king is slipping. His heart is no longer pure. Soon he will be ours. This is where the tension rises. Because what happens when the wisest man alive loses control over the very darkness he thought he had mastered? What happens when the chains begin to break? And here's a deeper question. Doesn't that mirror us? How many times do we think we're in control of our habits, our desires, our secret struggles, only to realize later that the thing we thought we controlled is now controlling us? Isn't that the real danger of sin? The illusion of mastery, when in truth, we are the ones enslaved? Solomon's story warns us of that. And in this legend, it goes further. The danger grew so immense that heaven itself had to intervene. God's greatest warrior, the Archangel Michael, the same angel who fought against Lucifer, had to step into the scene. Think about that. Michael, the angel who commands heavenly armies, descending to face the very spirit Solomon once bound. What does it say about the power of those 72 demons? That it wasn't just another angel, but Michael himself who came to confront them. The story of Solomon isn't just about wisdom anymore. It becomes a battle between heaven and the abyss, between what is holy and what is corrupted. And it all started because a man once close to God allowed his heart to drift. Now I want you to imagine this cliffhanger. Solomon alone in his palace, the glow of gold and incense all around him. The ring that once blazed with God's power, now dull in his hand. And from the corners of the night, laughter, low, mocking, demonic laughter, rising as the 72 prepare to break their chains. And somewhere beyond the veil, Michael, God's champion, unsheathes his sword of light. The stage is set. Let's step into the darkness for a moment. The Temple of Solomon has already been built. Its stones gleam in the sunlight, its walls echo with prayers, and the smoke of sacrifices rises like a holy fragrance toward heaven. But behind the scenes, hidden beneath the beauty, something else stirs. The 72 demons. Now, according to the ancient tradition, these weren't just nameless spirits. Each of them had a distinct personality, a power, a way of corrupting or afflicting the world. They weren't chaotic shadows without form. They were organized, deliberate, and intelligent. And isn't that always how evil works? It doesn't just come rushing in as a monster with fangs. It slips into the cracks, whispering, tempting, planting ideas, exploiting weaknesses. The stories say that Solomon interrogated each demon, demanding its name, its purpose, and the sin it inspired, and each one answered. One demon confessed that it stirred anger in men until they killed their brothers. Another said it made women abandon their homes and husbands in lust. Another admitted to slipping into the dreams of kings, filling their minds with paranoia and pride until they waged wars. Think about that for a second. These weren't just ghosts or scary phantoms. They were personifications of human struggles: envy, greed, lust, rage, fear, despair. Does that sound familiar? Isn't that the same war we still face today? One demon was said to cause sickness in the eyes, blindness, cataracts, things the ancients couldn't explain. Another tormented children with fevers. Another whispered suicidal thoughts to men standing at cliffs. Another made merchants greedy, turning fair trade into exploitation. And one of the most chilling? A demon who confessed that he lingered around altars, corrupting even acts of worship. He said, "Where incense is burned, there I make men's prayers empty, for I twist their words before they reach the heavens." Now let me pause and ask you, doesn't that strike you to the core? How often do we think of evil as only out there? But what if it lurks even in moments we think are holy? What if distraction in prayer, insincerity in worship, or hidden pride in service are ways these same forces still move today? So Solomon cataloged them one by one, 72 voices, 72 confessions of corruption. And with the power of the ring, he forced them into obedience. Some were made to lift stones for the temple, others dug the foundation, some carved the wood, others cut the gems. But here's the question: did Solomon truly have power over them? Or was he only holding them back temporarily, like snakes coiled in jars waiting to strike? Because while they labored, they whispered. They cursed his name. They studied his weaknesses. They learned his patterns. And most of all, they waited. The ring, after all, was the key. As long as it burned with divine authority, they were bound. But if Solomon's heart drifted, if his loyalty to God wavered, then the seal would lose its glow. And that's exactly what happened. As Solomon's wives brought their idols, he allowed shrines to rise in the hills of Jerusalem. First a small one, just for peace, then another for diplomacy, and another to satisfy the love of a foreign queen. Compromise after compromise. And every time Solomon turned his gaze from the Lord, the seal dimmed. Every prayer to a foreign god was like a crack in the wall. Every burnt offering to an idol was like loosening the lock on the prison. And the demons knew it. Can you imagine the tension? These spirits, once chained, feeling the bonds loosen bit by bit, their whispers growing louder, their laughter echoing faintly in the night halls of the palace. Solomon himself, once clear-eyed with divine wisdom, now troubled, restless, caught in shadows he couldn't explain. The texts say that one night Solomon dropped the ring. Some versions say it was stolen. Others say he gave it away in a moment of weakness. Either way, the seal was broken, and that was all it took. The 72 demons rose. The descriptions are terrifying. Some appeared as monstrous forms, heads of lions, bodies of serpents, wings of ravens. Others as twisted parodies of men, tall, gaunt, with eyes burning like fire. Some as beautiful figures, deceiving, alluring, tempting. Isn't it interesting that evil sometimes comes dressed in beauty while hiding poison beneath? One demon burst forth like smoke from under the earth, filling the night sky with a foul stench. Another slithered through the palace, whispering confusion into the minds of the guards until they turned on each other. Another stirred unrest among the people, planting fear that their king had lost God's favor. Israel trembled. The holy city, once at peace, now buzzed with unrest. The very demons who once carried stones for the temple now sought to tear down its people from within. And Solomon, the great wise king, stood powerless. Imagine him staring at his empty hand where the ring once sat, hearing the mocking voices of the demons he once commanded. It was at this moment, according to the legend, that heaven intervened. The cries of Israel rose. The temple built by unwilling hands of spirits was now overshadowed by those same spirits seeking revenge. And God sent his champion, Michael, the angel who stood against Lucifer at the dawn of rebellion, the warrior with a sword of fire, radiant and unyielding, the commander of hosts. Can't you picture it? The night sky over Jerusalem, swirling with shadows filled with the shrieks of freed demons. And then, like a bolt of lightning cutting through a storm, Michael descends. Sword in hand, eyes blazing with holy fire, the air itself trembling with his presence. The confrontation was about to begin. The night Jerusalem shook was unlike any other. The people had seen storms before. They had seen armies approach from the hills, but this was different. This was not the rumble of chariots or the march of soldiers. It was the sound of voices, dozens of them, shrieking, whispering, laughing in tones no human throat could produce. The 72 demons were free. Above the palace, shadows twisted into monstrous shapes, blocking out the stars. Dogs howled, children woke in terror, and priests in the temple clutched the altar, sensing a darkness they had no words for. The sacred fire on the altar flickered, as though smothered by an unseen wind. And Solomon, the great king, sat slumped on his throne, his ring gone, his eyes hollow. For the first time in his reign, he felt truly powerless. His wisdom, once sharper than any blade, was clouded by compromise. His heart, once burning for God, now heavy with idols. And the demons knew it. They surrounded him, circling like predators. Their voices hissed, "You thought you could rule us. You used us, king, but now we are free. Your wisdom has failed you. Your God has abandoned you." Can you imagine the fear? The very creatures he once ordered about now towering over him, mocking him, ready to tear apart everything he had built. But heaven does not sit idle when darkness threatens God's plan. Somewhere beyond the veil of the earthly sky, the Archangel Michael stirred. His name means, "Who is like God?" a name that itself is a rebuke against prideful spirits. When Lucifer rose up, declaring he would be like the Most High, Michael's very existence answered the challenge. Who is like God? None. And now, when 72 spirits sought to corrupt the heart of God's chosen nation, Michael was called again. The legends say his descent was like fire tearing through the heavens. The people of Jerusalem saw a light blaze across the sky, brighter than lightning, yet steady, unshaken. Some cried out, thinking the end of days had come. Others fell to their knees, sensing that what approached was no ordinary light. Michael descended not as a whisper, but as a warrior. His armor shimmered like molten gold, reflecting the fire of heaven itself. His wings, and vast and terrible, stretched wide, stirring the air like a storm. And in his hand, a sword blazed, a weapon not of earthly forge, but of divine fire, a flame that could split not just flesh and bone, but the very essence of spirit. The demons shrieked. They knew that sword. They remembered it. This was the same weapon raised when they first fell, when Lucifer was cast down like lightning from heaven, and now it was unsheathed again. Michael landed in the heart of Jerusalem, the ground trembling beneath him. His voice, like thunder rolling through the hills, broke the night. "By the command of the Most High, I stand against you." The 72 recoiled. Some tried to laugh, to mock, but their voices cracked. Others snarled, their forms twisting, preparing for battle. They had waited centuries for freedom. They would not go quietly back into chains. Solomon, still on his throne, looked up. For a moment, clarity pierced his fogged mind. He saw the angel of the Lord standing in his city, and tears filled his eyes. He whispered, "Broken, God has not abandoned us." And then the battle began. The first demon surged forward, a creature with the body of a lion and the wings of a vulture. Its roar shook the palace walls. Michael raised his sword and with a single stroke of fire, split the beast in two, its form dissolving into smoke and ash. But for every demon that fell back, 10 more surged forward, one with the face of a beautiful woman, trying to lure Michael with illusions. One with the voice of 1,000 men, trying to confuse and overwhelm. Another like a shadow, trying to smother the flame of his sword. But Michael was unmoved. His light cut through illusion. His voice silenced confusion. His fire consumed shadow. Still, the demons fought with fury. They swarmed him, their shrieks echoing through the city. People hid in their homes, clutching their children, listening to the unearthly sounds of battle in the streets. Imagine hearing that. The clash of a flaming sword, the wails of spirits, the ground trembling as powers beyond human comprehension fought right outside your door. And here's the deeper meaning. This wasn't just a physical fight, it was a spiritual showdown. Each demon represented a vice, a sin, a corruption. When Michael struck one down, it was like God declaring, "This vice will not rule my people." When Michael silenced their voices, it was God saying, "Your lies will not drown out my truth." But make no mistake, it wasn't easy. The 72 pressed him with fury. They clawed, they hissed, they roared. The night was filled with chaos. And though Michael stood, unshaken, the sheer number was overwhelming. It was then, the story says, that Michael did not fight alone. He lifted his voice to heaven and the hosts of angels answered. A sound like rushing wind filled the skies, and suddenly above Jerusalem, the heavens opened. Angels descended in ranks, shining like stars, each bearing weapons of light. The people of Israel, peering from windows and rooftops, saw the night sky filled with radiant warriors, like an army of fire. The demons howled in rage. They had escaped Solomon's ring, but now they faced the armies of God. Michael raised his sword high, the fire blazing brighter than the moon. "By the Lord Almighty, you are bound, Madabrili," he declared, and the battle raged with a fury that shook the earth. One by one, the demons were forced back, chained in light, their cries echoing into the void. Some legends say they were cast into the Euphrates, sealed beneath the river until the appointed time. Others say Michael bound them in pits of darkness, guarded by angels until the final judgment. But one thing was certain, the 72 were defeated, and Solomon? The king watched it all. Imagine his heart, broken by failure, humbled by his sin, yet overwhelmed with gratitude that God had not utterly abandoned him. Tears ran down his face as he whispered, "Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised." Michael stood before him, radiant and fierce. His eyes burned with holy fire, but his voice was calm. "Solomon, wisdom is nothing without obedience. Your crown cannot protect you, your ring cannot save you. Only faithfulness to the Most High keeps you safe." Then, as quickly as he came, Michael lifted his wings, rose into the heavens, and vanished in a blaze of light. The city fell silent. The demons were gone. But the lesson remained, for Solomon, for Israel, and for us. When Michael finally faced Solomon's 72 demons, it wasn't just an isolated battle in some forgotten legend. It was the echo of something bigger. The eternal clash between light and darkness, between God's order and the chaos that seeks to undo it. And what's striking is how the story shows us that even the wisest human king, Solomon himself, could not manage these forces on his own. Think about that. Solomon, blessed by God with wisdom beyond measure, known for his wealth, his splendor, his ability to judge the people with fairness, even he could not stand alone against the weight of darkness. He needed help. He needed Michael, God's appointed warrior. Doesn't that sound familiar? How often do we feel like we're wise enough, strong enough, capable enough, only to find ourselves overwhelmed by battles we never saw coming? Michael's role here is not just about swinging a sword of fire and casting demons into chains. His role is about standing as a symbol of God's protection, God's intervention, and God's mercy. Because no matter how wise or strong we think we are, we all reach moments where we need help from above. And here's where it gets really interesting. The legend says that Solomon used a special ring, the Seal of Solomon, to command the demons. With it, he could bind them, question them, even force them to work. That ring became the tool that gave him authority over spiritual forces. But in the end, Solomon's downfall came not from demons he enslaved, but from his own heart being pulled away by temptation, pride, and idolatry. So here's the question, which is more dangerous, the demons outside of us or the demons within us? Michael's battle reminds us that external forces can be confronted. With God's authority, even the mightiest spirits of darkness tremble. But the internal battles, the slow erosion of faith, the pride that blinds us, the compromise that pulls us away, those are often the hardest to fight. That's where even Solomon stumbled. And maybe that's the reason the legend ties Michael into this story, because it shows us that human wisdom, while powerful, is not enough. Divine strength has to step in, and Michael becomes that reminder that we are never fighting alone, even when we face what feels like an army of 72 demons pressing against us. Now imagine it. Picture Michael, radiant and fierce, standing before a host of spirits who once tormented humanity, each one representing different evils: deceit, rage, lust, greed, sickness, despair. Picture him raising his sword and declaring that they will bow, not to Solomon, not to man, but to God himself. That's the turning point. That's the victory. And it makes you wonder, what are the 72 demons in your own life? Not literal spirits perhaps, but struggles, burdens, temptations, fears that keep circling back again and again. Which ones keep whispering to you in the dark? Which ones make you doubt your own strength? If Michael could stand for Solomon, then maybe that story is really about how God sends his protection to stand for us. That when the shadows rise, when life feels unbearable, when you feel like every direction is blocked by something trying to pull you down, you are not alone.